If you don't want to go to college, then do something as good or better. And if you can't, then go to college. Don't sit around and do nothing. That's a very big mistake. It's possible that college isn't for you. You know, I mean, there's other things you can do that are productive. If you're wondering, if you're a high school student and you're wondering if college is for you, one of the things I would recommend is choose as an alternative something equally or more difficult. And I would say to all of you, if you're ever facing a decision in your life, this is kind of a good rule of thumb, because you always have to ask yourself, is this not right for me, or am I just useless and lazy? It's good to keep yourself in check. And so maybe you're not doing very well in your job, and you think, well, I should either do a better job at my job, or maybe I should find a new job. And it's hard to do better at your job. And so then you might wonder if your decision to find a new job is just an escape. But if the rule is you'll only escape to something equally or more difficult or more challenging, let's say, then you kind of check yourself against your own temptation. If you're a high school kid and you don't want to go to college because you don't think it's for you, fair enough. Do you have a better plan? And if the answer is no, well, that's not a very good plan. It's college or nothing. Well, go to college then, because nothing is a really bad plan. And so if you don't want to go to college, you should do something else. And there's lots of other things to do. You can go to trade school, or you could go to a tech boot camp, or you could go into the military, or you could go get a job, or you could pursue something creative, or you could generate an enterprise, or you could do volunteer work. It's like you want to have a vision that justifies your decision not to go to college. And you know, you could try college for a year or a semester and see how it goes. And then I would also say, even though I am somewhat and justifiably cynical about institutes of higher education, when I went to college and university, particularly university, because the college I went to, which was a small college, was a very good college, and most of the professors there really wanted to teach, and I learned a lot there. But at university, it was much more hit and miss. A fairly high proportion of the classes were abysmally bad. They were taught by people who had no business whatsoever teaching anything to anyone, even though they might have been credible researchers. They were terrible communicators. And that was at least one class out of 4. And then another, at least 1 out of 4, wasn't good for other reasons. So even when the universities weren't corrupted to the degree they are now, if you wanted to go to university and get a good education, that was sort of on you. You know, you had to pick and choose between the professors. You had to use your head to find the elements of value. And I think that in most educational institutions you can still do that, although it's not the case that you can do that at all of them. And it's increasingly less likely that that's the case in the humanities, I would say. But I'm not so cynical that I believe it's impossible to go to the typical higher education institute and be careful and learn. Because there's always the library too, you know, and the library is full of books, and books are written by great people, and you can go read the books written by great people, which is what you should be doing when you go to college anyways, or going to university. And the other advantage to going to college is that you buy an identity. You can say to people when they say, well, what are you doing? Which is sort of like saying, who are you? You can say, I'm a student. And that gives you an identity. And student means I'm someone who's made the sacrifices necessary to allow myself the freedom to determine who I want to be through a period of study extending over about 4 years. I don't think there's any difference, by the way, between prayer and thought. I think that thought is secularized prayer. I think that's even true, like evolutionarily and historically. And then the question is, well, what is prayer? And by implication, thought. And that is the opening up of yourself to revelation, and then the critical analysis of the revelation. And so what do I mean by that? I mean, when you think, you admit your ignorance, and you note that you have a problem, and you formalize the problem, which is to ask the question associated with the problem, and then you open yourself up for receipt of an answer. Well, how would have I liked my father to have conducted himself? And How did fathers that I knew that I admired conduct themselves? And how did great men in history who would be models for fathers conduct themselves? And what is the eternal spirit of the redeeming father? Those are all the same question at different levels of depth. And if you ask yourself that question, you'll stumble towards a revelation of the answer. And then it's incumbent on you to embody that, to act it out. You could ask a different question. What stupid things am I doing that I could stop doing, that I would stop doing, that are interfering with me being that? What stupid thing am I doing that I could quit doing, that I would quit doing? But there might be something on the edge there where, weak and useless as you are, you could stop that. Who knows what would happen if you really got your act together? You know, like there is this weird idea that's central to our culture that because we're all of divine value, that we have the spark of God himself within us, but we don't allow that to make itself manifest because we lack the courage and the faith. Your kids want to have the best relationship with you that they possibly could have. Like they're 100% on board with that idea. Way more than anyone you've ever met in your life. And that means you could have the best relationship with your children that you've ever had with anyone. That's what they offer you. And it's up to you to realize that, and you could. That's a good opportunity, man. Even if you've been beat around a lot and betrayed and hurt, you've got those little kids and they're thinking, what do you want to do, Dad? You know, the thing about people that you don't really understand is that he said fundamentally we're ungrateful and we can curse. If you set up a utopia so that all people had to do was eat cakes and busy themselves with the continuation of the species, that after a surfeit of that, after enough of that, which would happen quite quickly, people would just go mad just to break things, just so something unexpected and remarkable could happen, and that we're not built for security and safety, but for something, well, let's call it adventure, something like adventure. That's a good thing to know, you know, because you don't want to suffer unduly. And you might think because of that, that really what you want is happiness. You know, happiness is a boat that's easily capsized and the waves are always there. And so if your philosophy is one of, say, impulsive happiness, then you're not prepared when all hell breaks loose. And all hell, it will absolutely 100% break through at some point in your life. It might be a lot of it, and for some of you, it's going to be damn near the whole thing. And so if what floats your boat is happiness, you're going to be capsized by the first decent wave. And so then you might ask yourself, you know, what do you have instead of happiness that might be even more reliable? And I do think that adventure is more reliable than happiness. And in the Old Testament story of Abraham, Abraham is presented as a late bloomer, to say the least. And he had a very rich father by nomadic standards, and he could just sit around in the tent all day. But, you know, God appears to him and says, get out of your security, get out of your comfort, leave your family, leave your community, leave your nation, go out into the world. And it's very interesting. God is presented as the manifestation of the Spirit that calls even the too secure and pampered to adventure. But the promise is the promise of adventure. The implication is that if you have a sufficient adventure, then that can God so much protecting himself outside of the justify.
Bài ca buồn mà cất lời không lên, người đi mất mà nhất thời không quên. Lòng u tối dưới đất trời không đêm, kể từ khi sống lấy lất đời không em. Đầu quay cuồng trong hơi men, đưa chân về nơi quen, dấu vết chẳng hề phai. Và rồi chợt nhận ra và vô tình khơi thêm ký ức bung lơi êm mà đã từng kể vai và ngồi. Chẳng cần thiết phải viết nên sử sách mà lại phải nếm trải chuyện não nề. Chẳng thể biết thời tiết đẹp như tranh, thực ra là đằng xa có một cơn bão về. Chẳng cần mơ hay chờ đến vạn kiếp để ta được cạn tiếp cho hết tiền giao bôi. Rồi chẳng thể nỡ để vỡ mười nhân duyên, nên ta chỉ khấn nguyện chọn đời này chung lối thôi. Những kẻ si mê tới điên thường mơ tưởng cái thiên đường yêu nương được tô điểm, nhưng hận tạo hóa tuyệt nhiên có ai đành bên em thành anh đài tình ta như hồ điệp vẫn mãi giữ riêng đây về giây phút khắc sâu. Chẳng yêu em mà từng chút mắc câu sầu hôn hút khuất sau vẻ nét bút chắc đau hạnh phúc đâu cần chỉ cho cút bắt đầu. Nhớ đến cái lúc còn gió sương vơi đầy, nhớ hình bóng người nào đó vương nơi này. Trong vài khoảnh khắc mong có được đôi tay ấy cố lau đi bờ mi khi nào thưởng hơi cay. Xa một người và bước qua cuộc đời không phải xa đi vĩnh viễn mà chúng ta chỉ tạm chỉ lấy.
Biography, one of the things that you want to be able to say to yourself is something like, that was extraordinarily difficult, but it was worth it. You see the suffering of the world, you see the suffering of children, you see maybe your children or your suffering. Wonder how can reality be constituted so that I can have faith in its essence when there is so much suffering.
Em đến nhẹ nhàng như cách em đi qua cái khảng lãng mạn như thi ca, khiến anh chẳng nhớ được gì cả, chỉ chút vừa vã anh ghi. Và anh không biết được là đôi mình còn gần bên nhau bao lâu nữa. Nhiều lúc anh nghĩ hay thôi mình có lẽ là đừng yêu nhau nữa, vì cãi vã nhiều quá anh mệt lắm, chia tay nhiều quá anh mệt lắm. Tất cả ở em đều mệt lòng, nhưng rồi thời gian cũng hết năm. Em thì vẫn ở đó, vẫn nắm chặt tay, vẫn kể môi sát môi. Anh thì vẫn như vậy, vẫn nghệ sĩ nghèo chỉ có lời hát thôi. Em à, người ta mất nhau trong 2 tuần và ta xa nhau cũng 2 lần. Anh không có phải thằng khờ cũng biết trái tim đâu đó đã phai dần. Phải cần một sự liều lĩnh để thấy mình còn luyến thương nữa không. Mình sống với nhau như vợ chồng, những tình thế này thì chưa giống. Bài nhạc anh viết vẫn chưa xong, liệu rằng ngày đó có đi say anh thường hãy nhắc về em, mong khỏa lấp những u tối. Khoảnh khắc về đêm nghe lại bài ca ngày xưa cũ, ta hát về nhau nhớ những giấc mơ ta từng ước, to tát về sau. Và đó là khi mà anh dần lụy là không làm chủ chính mình, thấy không gian trở nên tồi tệ, mọi thứ bao phủ chính mình. Em đâu còn như điều anh mơ, anh cũng tự nhủ chính mình. Nhưng mà thôi em, nào ai giỏi mà đủ tính tình, chẳng thể vươn tới được cảnh cao dù anh có nhã ý trèo. Trong cơn say mọi thứ cuồng quay, anh trở thành gã chí phèo. Yêu chân thành là không thay lòng dù em có như thị nở. Ý anh là em như cô tấm, nhìn em như thị nở. Đêm vắng ngàn ngón tay xám vàng vì đốt cả bao thuốc lá. Căn phòng chung ký xưa nồng ấm, bây giờ sao bút giá. Một thói xấu mà anh đã quen khi em không ở bên lâu. Anh thường ngồi trong một góc tối nhậu suốt cả đêm thâu. Em mang con tim anh đi đâu, khiến anh mù quáng vẫn cố sáng mỗi khi đau. Em mang con tim anh đi đâu, điều gì choáng váng để xứng đáng ướt mi nhau. Em mang con tim anh đi đâu, khiến anh mù.
Other than being protected all the time from everything that could hurt you.